The abandoned starship nobody cared about, a human mechanic, made it a war machine. The galaxy was vast, colder and darker than anyone liked to admit. Stars burned like scattered diamonds, but between them, space felt empty, silent, and unfeeling. Among that emptiness, Kale floated in his small freighter, scanning old star maps with a mixture of boredom and hope. He was a mechanic, but not a typical one. Humans were often laughed at in the galaxy. Small, fragile, and far behind alien engineering. But Kale had a reputation. He could fix anything. Sometimes even things no one else dared to touch. Today, his freighter needed parts he could not buy anywhere. Supplies were scarce on these outer routes, and Kale had grown used to scavenging. His sensors flickered, picking up a large object in orbit around a dead planet. At first glance, it looked like a shadow, a massive shape, but almost lifeless. When he zoomed in, the old starship appeared, enormous, abandoned, and almost falling apart. Its hull had scratches and scars, as if it had seen battles long forgotten. The engines were cold, silent, and useless, or so everyone thought. "They say nobody cares about this ship anymore," Kale muttered, adjusting his controls. "Perfect. That's exactly why I'm going there." Humans often had to work with what others ignored. And Kale liked the challenge. Aliens called him reckless, but he called himself practical. He slipped into the ship's orbit and fired his docking thrusters. The airlock opened with a groan that echoed across the empty halls. Inside, silence waited. Not the kind of silence that comforts. It was the deep, heavy silence of a place abandoned for decades. Kale's boots clicked against metal floors as he wandered through the corridors. Dust had gathered in corners, and panels hung loose like broken teeth. Yet, among the decay, he noticed something strange. Patterns in the way the ship had been left. Tools were scattered, wires cut but carefully coiled, and in one dark corner, an old maintenance robot slumped against the wall. Its sensors flickered weakly as if sensing Kale's presence. "Still alive, old friend?" Kale asked, crouching beside it. He patted the robot lightly. With a spark and a soft hum, the little machine powered up, its lights blinking in a slow rhythm. Kale smiled. He loved machines that could talk back, even in their quiet way. The deeper he went, the more he felt the ship was unusual. Most abandoned starships were hollow husks, empty shells of glory days long gone. But this one felt different, like it was waiting for someone. At the heart of the ship, Kale found the command center. The control panels were covered in dust, but the main console still had life. It flickered faintly as he approached. His fingers hovered over the keys, and suddenly the screen lit up. Data streamed across it, old logs from decades past. No one told me it was still functional. In fact, we couldn't have been built as part of a human defense program. The Starship had been built as part of a human defense program, designed to protect colonies from external threats. But decades ago, it had been decommissioned. Human authorities had called it too old, too dangerous, too costly. And then it was forgotten. Left adrift, unnoticed, unloved. Among the logs, Kale found warnings. Not simple errors or malfunctions, these were messages about a fleet moving across the galaxy, silent, calculating, and extremely dangerous. This fleet had passed by several systems without detection. If it reached inhabited colonies, no one would be ready. Kale leaned back, heart racing. "And here I am, the only one who cares," he muttered. A thrill ran through him. Humans were rarely in such positions. Usually, they watched as others handled the big threats. Now, in this abandoned starship, Kale realized he might have a chance to make a difference. Not because he had power, but because he could think differently. Like humans always did, he activated the ship's AI interface. The voice was faint at first, a ghost of the old programming. System dormant, minimal, activity detected. Kale grinned. "Hello, old friend. You and I are going to fix that." For the next several hours, Kale worked tirelessly. He checked engines, reconnected circuits, and bypassed damaged systems. He didn't rush because he knew every wire mattered. Aliens often relied on raw energy and brute force. Humans relied on cunning and precision. That would be his advantage. As he worked, Kale explored more of the ship. He found hidden compartments filled with old blueprints, storage rooms with tools no one had used in decades, and navigation charts showing places humans no longer visited. One discovery excited him more than the others, a section labeled Weapon Systems. But it wasn't weapons for destruction. It was defensive, shields, decoys, and strategic modules designed to outthink enemies rather than destroy them. This ship was ahead of its time, Kale whispered, and nobody noticed. Night, or what passed for night in orbit, came and went. Kale didn't care. His hands were steady, his mind sharp. The ship responded slowly but surely. Lights flickered in corridors that had been dark for decades. Engines gave soft hums, almost like breathing. It was as if the ship itself had been asleep, waiting for someone who cared. But Kale knew it would not be easy. The ship was massive, far too complex for one human to fully understand in a day. Every system he activated revealed another layer of mystery. In one room, he found ancient communication logs showing other humans had tried to revive the ship before, but failed. The AI had locked them out. Yet now, Kale was different. He approached problems differently, improvising, trusting instinct. The ship seemed to sense that. By the time he returned to the command center, he was tired but alive with excitement. The main console blinked steadily. A map of the galaxy appeared, showing his location and the path of the approaching fleet. Kale's heart pounded. He whispered, I think we can do this. You and I. Together? For the first time, the abandoned starship seemed alive. The hum of engines grew stronger. Panels lit up in sequence. The AI spoke again, a little louder. Recognition, human input accepted, system reboot in progress. Kale laughed softly. Welcome back, friend. He didn't yet know if the ship could move. He didn't yet know if it could face the fleet. But for the first time, Kale felt hope, not just for himself, but for humanity. In a galaxy that had long overlooked his kind, a single human mechanic was about to turn an abandoned, forgotten giant into something extraordinary. Kale sat in the captain's chair, hands resting on the controls. The stars outside streaked past as the ship slowly powered up. He smiled. Let's see what you can do. And somewhere deep within the old circuits and ancient code, the starship seemed to respond, a whisper of energy, a quiet pulse that said, I've waited a long time, and now I'm ready. The galaxy might not care about humans yet, but Kale knew one thing. Sometimes, all it took was one human with a spark of ingenuity to change everything. The first light of distant stars glinted across the hull of the abandoned starship. Kale leaned over the console, his hands moving quickly, but carefully. Every button, every dial, every circuit mattered. He was not just repairing a machine, he was waking a sleeping giant. And a sleeping giant, he thought, needed more than human hands. It needed human thinking. The ship's AI hummed quietly, almost shyly. It was no longer the dead, silent thing drifting through space. It had begun to respond, following Kale's guidance, learning from him. Its lights pulsed gently as he worked, as if the starship itself recognized that someone had finally come to care. Kale moved to the engine core. Years of neglect had corroded pipes, and some conduits were missing entirely. Alien engineers would have called it beyond repair, but Kale smiled. Humans had a way of seeing possibilities others didn't. He began to reroute energy flows, connecting power conduits in ways the original designers had not intended. Sparks flew occasionally, and alarms sounded, but he ignored them, trusting his instincts. Hours passed. Kale paused, wiping sweat from his brow. "You're smarter than I thought," he muttered, staring at the blinking interface. "And stubborn, just like me." Then he moved to the ship's weapons systems. The original designs had focused on raw power, enough to obliterate enemy ships. Kale had no interest in destruction. He wanted defense, strategy, clever solutions. He rewrote the ship's targeting protocols, creating a system that could predict enemy movements, deploy decoys, and strengthen shields in precise locations, all without firing a single shot. "This is more than a weapon," KL said, eyes shining. "You're a chess player, not a hammer. And we're going to be very good at this game." As he worked, KL explored the corridors. The ship was enormous, more than a kilometer long, and it had secret compartments, hidden maintenance shafts, and storage rooms full of forgotten technology. He found an old drone bay, filled with small scout drones that had lain dormant for decades. With a few adjustments, they flickered to life, buzzing quietly like bees. "Hello, little ones," Kale said, watching as the drones followed his hand motions. "You'll be very useful." He returned to the command center and connected the ship's AI directly to his freighter's systems. This allowed him to control the Starship's diagnostic functions remotely. He tested navigation systems, engines, shields, and communications. Everything responded to his commands. The Sentinel, he decided to call the ship after the way it would watch over colonies when no one else could. Kyle smiled. "You're not just a starship. You're a guardian." As he adjusted power flows, he discovered old flight logs hidden deep in the AI's memory. The ship had been designed for human ingenuity, not just brute force. Its original pilots had created algorithms that allowed the ship to anticipate threats using clever logic instead of overwhelming firepower. Kale grinned. "They built you for humans, after all. That explains why you're still awake." Using the logs, he began to adapt the Starship further. Shields could now redirect energy to areas under stress. Sensors could detect cloaked ships. Navigation could plot unpredictable maneuvers, confusing any pursuers. Kale modified propulsion to allow short bursts of incredible speed. Every change was subtle but powerful. This was not just repair, it was evolution, and Kale was the human spark guiding it. Outside, the galaxy moved silently. Kale knew the alien fleet was still approaching, moving toward human colonies. No one else noticed yet because humans were small and insignificant in the eyes of larger alien civilizations. But Kale had seen the threat. He had studied it in the Starship's old logs. And now he had a weapon. A weapon powered not by raw destruction, but by human thought, intuition, and adaptability. While Kale worked, he reflected on the human advantage. Aliens often relied on rules, routines, and brute strength. Humans were unpredictable. We could improvise, innovate, and see solutions others could not. That unpredictability made Kale smile as he modified the ship. Every system he adjusted made the Starship uniquely human. He spent hours testing the AI's responses to unusual situations. Drones navigated complex mazes. Shields adapted to sudden energy bursts. Navigation avoided simulated ambushes. Kale's human thinking made the AI flexible, clever, and fast. At one point, he paused and studied the ship's interface. The AI pulsed gently, almost like a heartbeat. "You trust me?" Kale asked softly. The interface blinked in a slow rhythm, as if answering yes. He laughed. "Good. Because we're going to need that trust." Late in the ship's corridor, Kale discovered a hidden laboratory. It was dusty and dark, but inside were experimental modules, old research equipment, and alien components humans were never meant to understand. Kale spent hours tinkering with the lab's systems, integrating some of the technology into the Sentinel. The result was remarkable. The ship could now repair minor damage on its own, adapt shield patterns to unknown threats, and coordinate drones for reconnaissance without Kale issuing every command. "This is incredible," he said, amazed. "You're not just alive, you're learning." He then tested the ship's communications. A broadcast channel connected him to human colonies nearby. Kale sent coded messages to warn them, "Stay calm. A fleet is coming. I'm on my way." The responses were slow, frightened, but hopeful. Humans were not used to being saved by one person. But Kale had no time to wait for confidence to build. The galaxy moved fast, and he had to move faster. As Kale adjusted the final systems for the day, the ship pulsed with energy. Lights flickered across corridors, engines hummed steadily, and sensors scanned the void like the eyes of a giant. The abandoned Starship, ignored for decades, had become a living machine once again, powered not by brute force, but by human creativity, insight, and courage. Kale stood in the command center, staring at the vast view of space. The distant fleet appeared on sensors as a faint glimmer, almost invisible. Most humans would have ignored it. Most aliens would have crushed it easily. But Kale had something no one else had. A combination of old technology, clever adaptation, and human intuition. "This is only the beginning," Kale whispered. "You and I, we can protect them. We can show them what humans are capable of." For the first time, Kale felt the weight of responsibility. Not fear, not doubt, but purpose. The ship responded to his emotions, almost as if it understood the human need to protect, to survive, to adapt. The Sentinel was no longer just a machine. It was an extension of Kale's mind, his ingenuity, and his humanity. The hours passed into night. Stars streaked past as Kale ran final diagnostics. Engines were stable, shields adaptive, drones operational. The ship hummed gently, a sleeping giant no longer dormant. Outside, the galaxy remained unaware of the danger approaching human colonies. But inside, a single human mechanic had made a difference. Kale paused, leaning back in the captain's chair. "Tomorrow, we test you," he said. "We see how far your cleverness can go. We see if humans can truly make a difference." The AI responded with a faint glow and a soft pulse, as if agreeing. The Sentinel had been abandoned, ignored, forgotten. But now, it was alive, and humanity, through one mechanic's hands, had given it purpose again. Kale closed his eyes briefly, imagining the fleet that would soon arrive. He was ready. The ship was ready. Together, they were about to show the galaxy that human creativity and courage could turn even forgotten giants into unstoppable forces. Without a single drop of blood, and somewhere in the quiet hum of the engines, the ship seemed to whisper back, "I've waited a long time for someone like you. And now, I'm ready." The stars stretched endlessly beyond the viewport, calm and indifferent. But Kale's mind raced. Sensors displayed the approaching alien fleet. Silent, methodical, dangerous. They had not detected him yet. That was good. It gave him time. But time was short. Every second mattered. Kale leaned over the control panel, eyes scanning multiple screens at once. His hands moved quickly, rerouting power to engines and shields. The Sentinel hummed in response, as if understanding the urgency. The abandoned starship, once lifeless and ignored, now pulsed with life, alive in every wire, every circuit, every algorithm. "This is it," Kale whispered to himself. "Let's see if all this work was worth it." Tiny scouts darted from hidden bays, silent and almost invisible, moving ahead of the starship to gather information. The AI processed the data quickly, identifying the fleet's positions, speeds, and possible maneuvers. Kale smiled. Humans were small and often underestimated, but human thinking, unpredictable, clever, creative, could turn the tide. The fleet was not large, but it was organized, dangerous, and disciplined. Alien ships moved in rigid patterns, following rules that rarely changed. That predictability was Kale's advantage. The Sentinel could react in ways the aliens could not anticipate. Kale plotted a route. He didn't want a direct confrontation. He wanted misdirection, strategy, and surprise. The starship's engines roared quietly, barely making a sound as it glided past asteroids, weaving between shadows. He tested a decoy system, projecting false energy signatures to mimic a much larger fleet. Sensors on the alien ships flickered. They slowed, confused. Kale chuckled softly, "Just as I thought. You don't think like humans do." He adjusted shields to shift dynamically, redirecting energy to areas most likely to be attacked. The AI adapted instantly, learning from the simulations Kale had created. It was a perfect synergy. Human intuition guiding machine precision. The first wave of alien scouts appeared on sensors, fast and sleek. Kale's drones intercepted them, weaving between the enemy ships, creating false targets and feeding misleading data. One by one, the alien scouts began to chase shadows, while the Sentinel moved freely through gaps in their formation. "This is where humans shine," Kale muttered. "We see what others can't. We make the impossible possible." As the main fleet drew closer, Kale executed the next part of his plan. Using the ship's propulsion in short, precise bursts, he created sudden changes in trajectory. Alien ships tried to predict his movements, but each burst was unpredictable. Shields redistributed energy to absorb potential collisions, and decoys created phantom ships in multiple locations. The aliens fired at empty space, wasting energy and resources. Call felt a thrill he had never experienced before. It was not fear. It was not anger. It was the pure satisfaction of human ingenuity overcoming overwhelming odds. "Almost too easy," he said with a grin. "But let's see how you handle this." He engaged a complex maneuver he had created while upgrading the Sentinel. The ship spun, accelerated, and shifted power between engines and shields in a pattern so intricate that even the AI needed Kale's guidance to execute perfectly. Alien sensors were overwhelmed. Their rigid strategies failed. They had not encountered anything like this in centuries. Kale's voice was calm, but firm as he issued commands. "Drones, flank left. Shields, adapt. Engines, prepare for jump." The ship obeyed instantly, moving like a single organism, perfectly synchronized with Kale's commands. The alien fleet hesitated. Their formation faltered. Ships collided with debris, tried to regroup, and found themselves confused by projections and decoys. The humans in distant colonies, unaware of the full danger, would have called this impossible. But Kale smiled, knowing that the Sentinel and he had already changed the game. And then came the scout ship. It was small, fast, and dangerous, the kind designed for reconnaissance and sabotage. It bypassed Kale's decoys and approached the Starship directly. Sensors flagged it immediately. Kale's heart raced, not with fear, but with excitement. This was the real test. He adjusted the ship's defenses, creating a web of adaptive shields around the hull. Then, he sent drones to intercept, guiding them with human intuition. The scout ship darted, attempted to outmaneuver the drones, but Kale anticipated every move. He had spent hours thinking like a human, and the scout was predictable in its patterns. "Come on, think like a human." "Think like a human," Kale muttered, moving his hand across the interface to simulate potential paths. The AI calculated dozens of outcomes instantly, but Kale's instincts, sharper than any algorithm, guided the final decision. A trap was set. The scout ship moved straight into a corridor of sensor projections. It tried to escape, but the Sentinel shifted energy to block its path subtly, forcing it toward drones. The drones moved in perfect formation, guiding the scout without touching it. It was trapped, not destroyed, just stopped. Kale laughed quietly. Humans do this better than anyone. Not brute force, but clever thinking. Strategy, creativity, that's our real strength. The alien fleet watched, confused. They had no idea what was happening. The abandoned Starship, ignored for decades, now appeared as an entire armada. Projections, drones, unpredictable maneuvers. It seemed impossible. And yet, it was real. Kale guided the Sentinel through more maneuvers, testing shield responses and energy distribution. Every system worked flawlessly. The AI had learned from him, adapting faster than any human could. But it was the human touch that made the difference. The creativity, the intuition, the understanding that not everything needed brute force. Hours passed. The fleet, unable to adapt, began to retreat. Kale's heart pounded, but he remained calm. The test was not over. He knew there would be more scouts, more waves, more challenges. But for now, humanity had won a small victory, not through destruction, but through intelligence. He leaned back in the captain's chair, breathing deeply. The star streak passed, and the hum of the engines was a comforting rhythm. The Sentinel was alive, learning, and perfectly attuned to him. Together, they had proven that human creativity could turn an abandoned giant into a force the galaxy could not ignore. And then, a subtle pulse from the AI caught his attention. It was not a command, not a warning, just a gentle signal, almost like a heartbeat. Kale smiled. "I know, friend. I feel it too. We're ready for what comes next." For the first time, Kale felt the full weight of what he had achieved. One human, thought insignificant by the galaxy, had revived a forgotten starship. One human had turned neglect into opportunity. One human had shown that creativity, courage, and quick thinking could achieve what brute strength could not. and the galaxy, still unaware of the battle that had almost happened, remained quiet and distant. But Kale knew the truth. Humans were not just survivors. Humans were thinkers, innovators, and problem solvers. The abandoned starship, the Sentinel, was proof. Kale adjusted the course, plotting a path back toward human colonies. The AI pulsed in response, as if agreeing. The fleet would be back. There would be more challenges. But Kale felt ready. Together, human and starship, they were unstoppable. Not because of weapons, but because of thought, creativity, and the human spark. He gazed at the stars, feeling a surge of pride. The Sentinel had been abandoned, ignored, and forgotten. But no longer. With human ingenuity guiding it, the starship had become something extraordinary. A silent guardian, a clever strategist, and a symbol of what humans could achieve. And Kale whispered quietly, almost to himself, "We're just getting started." The stars shone cold and distant as Kale guided the Sentinel through the void. The alien fleet, confused by the previous encounter, had regrouped but did not yet know how clever the human pilot and his ship truly were. Kale's sensors picked up scattered movements, minor scout ships probing the edge of human territory. Most humans would have panicked at the scale of the threat. Kale felt only determination. "Let's protect them," he whispered, voice calm. "Time to show them what humans can do." He adjusted the starship's shields, making them adaptive, flexible, and almost alive. The Sentinel hummed in agreement. Every pulse of energy, every flicker of light, was a response to Kyle's intuition. The drones, now fully operational, formed a network of eyes and ears across space. They could scout, confuse enemies, and relay information faster than any alien intelligence could predict. Kale plotted his course toward the nearest human colony, a small settlement nestled on a rocky planet with limited defenses. The colony had been warned, but they were still vulnerable. Kale needed to give them more than protection. He needed to buy them time. He began with strategy, not attack. Using the starship's advanced sensors, he created multiple energy projections, simulating a massive fleet approaching from every direction. Alien ships scanning the area saw ghosts of enormous warships. Their AI calculated threats based on numbers and size, but the illusions were too complex, moving unpredictably. "They think they're facing an armada," Kale murmured. "And they're scared." Good. The first wave of alien scouts arrived, sleek and fast. Kale guided the Sentinel through a complex dance of movement, weaving between asteroids and using gravitational anomalies to shift the ship's path. The drones intercepted the scouts, drawing them toward decoy projections. Each move was calculated yet unpredictable, exactly what humans excelled at. Kale smiled as he watched the fleet falter. Humans aren't big or strong, but we're clever. And clever wins. The AI pulsed gently. Kale knew it understood the logic. Together, they moved as one. Energy was shifted to shields when a scout tried to close in. Engines surged to sudden bursts, creating paths too complex for the aliens to anticipate. The decoys projected multiple false targets, forcing the alien fleet to scatter. Meanwhile, Kale contacted the colony. "Stay inside. Don't panic. We're handling this." His voice, calm and confident, brought reassurance. The humans on the planet listened, seeing the massive starship above, glowing with renewed power. They had been abandoned once, left vulnerable. Now, one human mechanic and a forgotten giant were their guardians. Kale's attention returned to the alien fleet. The main group had arrived, larger and more organized than the scouts. They tried to analyze the Sentinel, but Kale had already adapted every system. Shields shifted faster than their scans could detect. Drones moved unpredictably, relaying false readings. Navigation twists and bursts made the starship appear in multiple locations at once. The alien fleet commander communicated orders. Kale could not understand the language, but he did not need to. He could see their intentions through movement patterns. They were cautious, hesitant, and increasingly confused. Kale grinned. "Not so confident now, huh?" he said softly. "Humans think differently. That's why we survive." Using the AI, Kale implemented a complex maneuver he had been testing for weeks. The Starship rotated, accelerated, and projected energy pulses in a rhythm that created optical illusions across space. To the alien sensors, it looked like dozens of ships moving independently. Drones scattered, shields flickered, and the fleet hesitated, unsure where to strike first. The colony watched from below. Panic had begun to fade. Hope replaced fear. People whispered, pointing at the glowing starship above. They did not know the details, but they knew one thing: they were safe. Kale's mind raced. This was not about destruction. It never had been. Every move was about strategy, intelligence, and protecting life. He directed drones to block potential routes, rerouted energy to strengthen shields in weak spots, and projected more false ships to confuse the enemy. The alien fleet tried again, moving as a single unit, but Kal-El anticipated each approach. He used gravitational assists from nearby asteroids to create sudden speed bursts, making the starship appear in multiple locations at once. Each burst left afterimages on the sensors, further confusing the alien AI. "Humans don't just react," Kale whispered. "We create, we predict, we adapt." The alien fleet, unable to adapt, began to retreat. The illusion of an overwhelming force, combined with unpredictable human thinking, had done what brute power could not: protect the colony without firing a single weapon. Kale watched as the ship slowly disappeared into the void, leaving the stars peaceful again. He let out a breath he didn't realize he had been holding. The Sentinel pulsed gently, almost like it was smiling. Together, they had turned fear into safety, chaos into strategy, and abandonment into triumph. Kale contacted the colony again. "You're safe. The fleet is gone. For now." Cheers erupted from the communication channels. Humans, long considered weak and fragile by the galaxy, were alive and safe, thanks to ingenuity, courage, and clever thinking. The starship's AI pulsed, a subtle rhythm, like a heartbeat. Kale smiled. "You've done well, friend. But there's more to do." He guided the Sentinel to patrol the outer systems, scanning for additional threats. The ship had learned from him, adapting strategies faster than any human could. But it was human creativity that made the difference. The ability to see possibilities, improvise solutions, and act where others hesitated. Kale reflected on what had happened. One human, considered small and fragile, had revived a forgotten starship. One human had protected countless lives without needing to destroy anything. One human had shown that intelligence, creativity, and courage could accomplish more than power alone. The colonies, once abandoned, now felt hope. Humans were not helpless. Humans were clever, inventive, and capable of facing threats that others could not. And Kale had proven it. As he watched the stars streak past the viewport, he whispered quietly, "We're just getting started." The AI pulsed in response. "We are ready." Kale smiled. For the first time in decades, he felt the galaxy might notice humans, not for size, not for strength, but for ingenuity. He had taken an abandoned giant, ignored by everyone, and turned it into a guardian. He had taken what others had forgotten and made it powerful. He had turned a lifeless machine into a symbol of what humans could do when they dared to care. The Sentinel hummed, engines glowing gently, shields flickering softly. The starship was no longer abandoned. The galaxy, silent and vast, might not understand yet. But Kale knew the truth. Humanity was clever, resourceful, and unstoppable when they put their minds to it. And somewhere deep in the circuits, a pulse of energy ran like a heartbeat. A giant had awakened, guided by a human spark. Together, they would face the galaxy, calm, clever, and victorious. Kale's eyes shone as he leaned back in the captain's chair. "Let's go home," he said softly. But he knew it was not just about home. It was about the stars, the colonies, and the countless lives that humans could protect. One human, one starship, one spark of ingenuity could change everything. And for the first time, Kale realized something profound. In the galaxy, humans were small, yes, but brilliance, courage, and creativity made them giants. The stars twinkled quietly, and in the silence, the Sentinel pulsed with life, a living monument to human ingenuity, courage, and heart.